So I just had a client, actually just a few days ago, who said to me, Ben, I try to meditate, but every time I do, my mind, it wanders off and I have to bring it back. And I said, you are meditating. That is it.
All right. So I want you to imagine this. All right. We're in, end of 2025 here, but imagine we go back to October of 2020. You are a construction worker. You're a very good construction worker. You love it. You travel not only the United States, but you travel the world doing this because you're so good at it. You're making good money. You've been at it for long enough to where you know what you're doing, but you still are young enough to where you got a number of years ahead of you. And then you get into an accident and you get injured and you can no longer work.
Bum, bum, bum.
October 2020, right? So, this is like 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So you find an attorney, you go through the process. You're not used to doing this. The friends that you had at work, well, they're not there. It's not because they're turning their shoulders. It's because they're just
busy working.
They're busy working. How do you feel during this time? You used to be able to pay for things. You used to be able to pay for your house, build your house. Now you don't have the income coming in, right?
In your identity.
Your identity, all of your identity, all of this stuff. When I think about that, I can just imagine a little ball or a blob in my chest, and it's just kind of moving around and it's gripping, and maybe your heart beats faster, maybe your temperature rises, maybe the temperature goes down. But that is anxiety. And unfortunately, for those that pursue justice with personal injury and anything else in life, the anxiety can take over.
Mm-hmm.
So you find an attorney, maybe they call you back, maybe they don't call you back. It's because you didn't go to Rory Law because we'll call you back. But you don't know the process. You're unfamiliar with it. You don't know what's going on. And so every step, every day you wake up and you just think, I don't know what's going to happen today.
Mm-hmm.
Is today the day?
Right. Well, they're just not sure.
They're not
right?
sure.
Creates anxiety. There's probably some lost identity. A lot of people have so much identity wrapped around their employment.
And it seems to never end.
Right. It's extremely long.
It's this black cloud kind of hanging over you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not so uncommon in this business. And at Unseen Impact, what we are doing here is uncovering this sort of this part of personal injury and how it kind of impacts your life.
Mm-hmm.
And what we like to do, the goal is to talk to folks about, something that's interesting that maybe you haven't heard about that's related to personal injury, but more than anything, possibly to give you or loved ones tools to cope with what's going on, whether it be personal injury or whether it be just anxiety in life.
Mm-hmm. For healing. Right. Because I think the whole process isn't just about like, I got hurt and now I want money. There's all these things that happen in between that, right? Where you're like going through so many things that you've never been through before and you need support. And there's more than just your attorney can't be your therapist. Your attorney can't be any of those pieces. And so I think it's an important time where people need to think about themselves and their healing beyond their case.
Well, that is very interesting because I think sometimes your attorney might be able to be your therapist in some sort of way.
Imagine that.
And so I am Rory. This is Unseen Impact, my beautiful co-host, Kerrie. And today we're here to talk about anxiety and how to kind of deal with it. And so today with us, we have Ben Coolik, who is a warm water somatic therapist.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Ben.
Thanks. It's really fun. It's nice to be here.
Thank you
really
for
exciting.
being here.
Well, before we get into, we're going to grill him with all sorts of questions. So if you think you're going to get away from the anxiety aspect of it, we're going for it. But before, I just want to let you know, we're not just bringing some random person in here. I met Ben at an event, and as an attorney, hey, life is anxious. You got kids, you got a business, you got all this stuff, and so I personally went through this process. And so as he kind of explains what it is, I'm going to kind of jump in and go for it. But before we get into water flow, before we get into warm water somatic therapy, we just got a few questions of Ben. Where are you from?
Oh, well, originally I was born in Atlanta, raised in Columbus, Georgia, but I currently live on the coast of North Carolina in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And then, can you give us, my thought is this, just because what is warm water somatic therapy, a couple little pointers, and then really what I want to know is, how did you get there?
Oh, wow. Great question. So
it was a direct route from high school. You were like, oh,
yeah,
right. It's all very clear.
Yeah, finished high school, and then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna float people in the water for a living. No.
Right.
So what is warm water somatic therapy? Well, we could have an entire show around all the nuances of that. But in essence, essentially, I work in a therapy pool, which is heated to ambient skin temperature, which for the average human being is about 95.5 degrees. So the water's quite warm. And in a session, I put floats on your legs to increase the buoyancy in your body. And then I float you in this water. And you're not just floating. You're actually under traction. So there's length being added to the body, lengthening the back of the neck.
And by traction,
the spine.
You are the traction.
Well, actually, the weight of the body dragging through the water, when I'm moving you through the water, that drag creates length through your whole spinal column. And when we give space to the spine and we give space to the cervical vertebrae, you're giving space to all those nerves that innervate. And so it's a natural calming effect just being in this warm water and floating. Wow. Now, the session, there's much more to it than that. There's inquiry and dialogue and, what brings you to the water? Why are you here? Tell me about your relationship with water. All of that kind of before we start. But I basically combine massage, stretching, shiatsu style acupressure, movements. Some of the movements are coordinated with the natural rhythm of your breathing. And so all of that is kind of combined together to make what I call a warm water somatic therapy experience.
And so when you're looking at it, just to give the description for those listening, is the floats go on the thigh and the calves on both, and then it's in essence to start you're laying, like you're almost lounging in the pool.
You're resting on your back, and your head is supported in 3 basic positions. Your head's either resting in my hand, or your head's in the crook of my arm if I have you like this, or your head's resting up on my shoulder. But the rest of your body is supported by the water, which is why we put those floats on the body, is so that in the session, you don't feel held by me. It's not like I'm there coddling you. Okay. You're being held by the water itself. Oh. So I like to describe my work as the relationship between you, your body, your breath, your heart, and the water, and that I am just there as a guide to help you in that relationship, in your own inner relationship.
That's really fascinating. And so I want to just go back to the question of how did you get there before we go more into
that is a good
good.
Well,
again, I'll shorten the story because it's really a great life story, but I won't go into all of it.
Just a couple highlights.
So, I had experienced a trauma in my teenage years, which really set me on this path of wanting to understand this human experience, more deeply, more intimately. What is it all about?
Right.
It opened up a lot of questions for me, that experience. So I started a meditation practice very early on, probably around the age of 18. 14 years later, I was at a warm water like a natural hot springs community. Mm-hmm. And this guy said, hey, I just got certified in this type of water flow therapy that was called water dance. And as a celebration of my certification, I'm just giving sessions to anyone who wants one.
Oh, wow.
And would you like to experience it?
Well, right place, right time.
And I said, sign me up. I love the water. And I like explorative practices. So I knew nothing. I had no idea what I was signing up for.
Oh, that's wild.
And what's really wild is that in a water...
I do know that feeling.
So in a water dance session, which is a particular style of water flow therapy, they actually take you underwater in that session. So they put nose clips on you partway through the session and they take you underwater. Wow. And I didn't know any of this when I signed up for it. But for me, the experience of that session, which was about a 2-hour session.
Wow. Wait, it was 2 hours, your first one?
My
And it
first
was like he's like volunteering. Wow.
And for me, it was profound because I had this meditation practice for so long. And yet I had never experienced what I experienced in that session, which, if you look at my website, I have a little caption. It's like the unadulterated stillness of the mind, just complete absence of thought, and a lot of people think that's the goal of meditation, which, it's not really, but it was pretty amazing to have experienced that.
Well, just real quick, what it makes me think about is, you read about meditation's big these days.
Yeah.
And that the idea of it, and some of it is kind of confusing for the average person. But one thing I like to hear is, 14, 15 years of a meditation practice and you're still going because it is a practice.
Correct.
So even if people are struggling for whatever reason it may be.
Yes.
Right? This isn't something like, oh, hey, I wiggle my nose, I unwrap the package, I pop a pill and there we go. It is a daily sort of, what I don't want to say struggle, but what
no,
call
it is a practice. So I just had a client, actually just a few days ago, who said to me, Ben, I try to meditate, but every time I do, my mind, it wanders off and I have to bring it back. And I said, you are meditating. That is it. It's nothing more than cultivating awareness about how your mind behaves, and you're asking the mind to pay attention to the body and the breath. But sure enough, for most of us, within about 3 seconds, the mind's trailing off down some random thought thread, and then you notice, oh, my mind has wandered off, and you say, I would like you to come back and let's just notice the breath in the body. And in about 3 more seconds, the mind has wandered off to the next thought and you invite it back again.
It's like a toddler.
That's the practice. That's the practice.
Well, and one thing I think that's kind of wild about it is that I think people can be a little bit intimidated by the idea because they think, oh, either this isn't something that I do, this isn't something that my family does, or this is something
woo-woo.
It's too woo-woo. Or, the biggest thing is, hey, I try it and I'm no good at it, so I don't want to be there. And so one thing I want to think about here is that, getting back to this idea that you're this construction worker here, who here you are 5 or so years later, and you still are kind of lost, and you wake up anxious. And I mean, you wake up anxious, it means you're not sleeping well at night, right? You wake up anxious, you're anxious throughout the day. Everything else is just kind of going off like fireworks. And that impacts every other aspect of your physical health and the emotional health.
And your relationships,
I was
right?
thinking the same thing.
What you're describing, Rory, is what, somatic therapists, we call the imprint, right?
Okay.
When you experience trauma, there's the immediate injury, right? But then there's the lasting imprint. It's like how that trauma stays with you and then starts to affect, like you're describing, everything. It's describing how you relate. It even describes your ability to even think clearly.
Right.
So even how you are now navigating your life as a human being is shifted because of this imprint that has now happened in the body.
Right.
It's almost trauma, whether it be from a personal injury or just trauma in life. It's almost like some sort of chemical reaction that forever changes you. Right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, when I like to say nothing is forever because everything does change over time and with time. But unless you are actively engaged with your own healing process, that imprint can last for the rest of your life,
Well, and it sounds like the 2 hours you had back in this hot spring area was imprinted on your life and somehow led to where you are today.
That is really insightful. And I actually have been taking notes because so much in the trauma world, when we're talking about these overwhelming experiences, and we usually are focused on the negative ones, right? But I actually think that the same thing happens with overwhelming positive experiences, that those can also be imprinted and stay with us.
And that kind of makes me think about, we were talking a little bit before, your role as the therapist
Mhm.
and kind of this imprinting on whoever has come to you, like me, right?
Mhm.
I come to you, I just feel calm. We're sitting in the pool. It's so warm. I'm immersed, almost to covering up my nose, and we start the process. And you're having kind of the pressure points, and I can just start to calm. And I have to think that it's more than just the surroundings. That I think some of it has to do with you, the practitioner, the therapist aspect of it.
Totally. So we call that co-regulation.
What is it called?
Co-regulation.
Co-regulation. Oh, okay.
So the idea is that, again, from the somatic therapy angle, that when we are in the presence of another person who is calm, that creates a container of safety, that is meeting us with unconditional acceptance, that we can just drop in and just exhale, just, just that is immediately starting to help re-regulate the nervous system that is in what you call that anxiety. It's more than just anxiety, right? There could be depression, there could be brain fog, there could be fatigue. It's not just
usually in the traumatic sense. All of that comes
it's all
in.
right.
We may say anxiousness, but it's this downward spiral that if you have one, almost like dominoes, it just clicks in and everything else just falls.
So what we're looking for are these opportunities to just to sigh away, just to be in that exhale, right? And so really anything that helps support that kind of ability, that creating a safety to be able to just relax into, is going to help start rewriting that story, that, that imprint that the injury created.
Well, what this makes me think about is, and Kerrie will get a kick out of this, our kids, right? They're, elementary school age kids. And it doesn't matter what time of day that they come home, a busy day, you're rushing out of the day or out of the morning to get them off. They're off to school, they're going to class, they got this study, and they're doing all of this stuff. They come home and all of them immediately put their pajamas on. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. I come home and you're like, what are you doing with your pajamas on? But they feel comfortable.
Right. They're unwinding.
That's right.
They're naturally unwinding from think of all the pressures that those kids are feeling from their peers, from their homework, from their teachers, not getting things right. I'm not smart enough. I'm not fast enough. I don't look as good as my other kids, whatever. So-and-so just broke up with me, whatever it is, and then they come home from, school is like a boiling pot of all of
kids
this,
around everything,
all of it, right? And then they come home. And it's like, oh, man, I just want to unwind.
It's that breath out.
It is.
But
It's that opportunity to exhale.
I think about people who smoke, right? That's like,
Are you saying like from a sense of they're somehow breathing because they're smoking?
Well, you know what? There's a whole thing, right? Because like it's not healthy, but there is this idea of taking a break from your life. Well, but you know what I mean? They're taking a break from their life to walk outside, which is fresh air. But like, and there's like,
think about how few of us focus on our breath.
Right.
And that your breath, because you're not focused on it, tends to become short and shallow.
That's right.
Right? But then you go out and you light up a cigarette and now you're focused, you're just breathing, And so I think that is part of the habituation of that addiction is I need this to be able to just be in my breath, to take this moment to unplug and to settle, but there are much healthier ways to do that.
That's right. But I think it's kind of interesting. I never really thought about smoking in the deep breath.
Well, what about when somebody comes home and they have a after work cocktail? Right, it's the same sort of thing. Like,
you're trying to
I've done
unwind.
everything, and I just get to kind of like calm.
Yeah, it's the chill. Yeah.
So the whole premise is that we recognize anyone who's a human being knows what it's like to carry the stress of our human experience, whether that is from an injury or a trauma to just having an argument with your spouse to, if you even think about it, driving down the interstate, right? Something that we're when you've been driving a number of years, you might even just do it automatically, right?
Yeah.
But your brain is processing all this information.
Right.
Right.
Out here, you got 5 lanes going each way, different cars, all the
Right.
colors.
You
all
may
the
not know where
lights.
you're going, so you're watching your navigation,
Right.
and oh, did I just miss my turn?
Right.
And so we're just navigating modern human life. It has a tendency to increase our stress level. So our
Yeah.
nervous systems are operating up here already.
Right.
So we want to learn techniques to, first of all, it starts with recognizing that your nervous system is wound up.
Right.
That's number one. And then once we can recognize it, then we can start working with it to bring it back into what we call homeostasis, into a healthy nervous system.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because what I see often, right? Because I'm no doctor. I tell people, you're like, hey, you break your bone or you break a bone, don't come to me. Go to a doctor. They're going to reset it, right? But if you see enough broken bones, you probably could go reset it. But with this, I what I do is I see trauma.
Right.
My kind of the silliness is nobody calls me because they're having a great day.
Right.
Right. Nobody calls me because they're having a great day. Right. They call you because they want to have a great day. Right. But for me, it's like, oh, I got to call the attorney. And yes,
I was just thinking about like how it feels on the attorney side. Like you go like, I'm going to take this call.
There it is again. The phone's ringing. We're gonna. Although here's the thing, from my perspective, is it's cool because, and so this is what some of what it makes me think about, Ben, is I'm not in the water with people, but in a same sort of sense, the co-regulation.
Yes.
And I had not put a term to it, but this co-regulation where you, as the attorney, not as just the one that knows the laws, not as just the one that knows the process, not as just the one. You have to be
their person.
Calm. I have to be the pajamas for the 8-year-old who comes home from school. And I shouldn't say I have to. I want to be the pajamas for the 8-year-old that comes home from school because, and from my perspective, any attorney can go get you money, right?
Right.
If you want to any attorney can get you money.
Right.
Where you can kind of earn your keep is when you can provide more. And I think you had even said beyond the fight.
Yeah.
Right. Beyond the fight.
Yeah.
What is it that I, as the attorney, can do?
How many of us, and people watching this, have gone to the person who cuts their hair and sits down and then just starts those guys are practically social workers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are cutting your hair, but but it's like and there are other professions that are like that. Maybe you go to your massage therapist, and they're a massage therapist. They're there to work on your muscles, and you just start talking to them about whatever drama is going on, because it's alive and present. But I love, Rory, that you are seeing what a significant role you can play in a person's life who is navigating something like, personal injury or a trauma, because you're absolutely right. It's like by being able to be that calm, you're going to help them settle. You're helping them navigate this process. And when I think about you guys, and this is just as a, I'm not a personal injury attorney, but even at the beginning of this, when Kerrie was talking and you said, it's sure anybody can get you money. But what I'm thinking as a somatic therapist is, what about the person that makes you whole?
Yes.
Isn't that even a legal term? Like, what is going to make it whole?
There's stuff called
right?
made whole
And,
doctrine.
okay. So it's like, to help this person be whole again, it's not just, going and getting them money. That's part of it for sure, so that they can navigate the logistics of their life. But how do we make them whole?
Well, and this is
I like that.
This is what's interesting for me, is looking at making whole and looking at through kind of the justice system. And making somebody whole through the justice system is one of the things that you're talking about is acceptance. Right? Accepting that, hey, what has happened is rough. If I'm a elementary school kid and I'm in school, it's rough, but I have to accept that. And then you need time to restore, and you need a place, a location, another person, or
support team,
support system. And so the person cutting your hair, it's also socialization.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's the co-regulation. It's that socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, after doing this for 16 years, that is what's most interesting. And I think that is where biggest impact can be made, right? Not in getting the person money, but having the person understand. Because, even if it's a minor impact, minor trauma, as you're talking about, trauma begets trauma begets trauma. You have some sort of physical trauma, which then now you can't go to work, so you're missing out on, maybe you're behind in your rent, or maybe you can't make some sort of payment, which is another trauma that goes through it.
Yeah.
And then it's just this.
And then you're so stressed out, your partner now it's like, what's wrong with us in our relationship? Because now there's an emotional trauma that's going on, and it starts to bleed into every aspect of your life.
So, and one question I have then is, how is it that, in your experience, how is it that people find water flow therapists?
Wow. Sadly, it's not easy because there are not a lot of us. Maybe this is a good time to mention that, you're going to, some of you have heard us talk about water flow therapy. So I use water flow therapy as this umbrella term, and there are actually lots of styles of water flow therapy. Just like when you say you go for a massage, you might go for a hot stone massage or a deep tissue massage or a Swedish massage. There's all these styles, right? So there are lots of styles of this water flow therapy. So I mention that because underneath that umbrella, there's Watsu, water dance, healing dance. Not everyone is doing warm water somatic therapy. Some people are doing more massage-oriented work in the water. So you can find out in the world, you're more likely to come across like a Watsu practitioner at a spa, that has a little pool and some spa music playing. And that can be very soothing, very relaxing, but very different than coming to me, and working, some dialogue, some inquiry, sharing what's really alive and present in your life and how we integrate that.
It sounds more difficult, right? Or at least the person.
For me, it's just more holistic. It's like, for me, it's like I personally, it's great for you to come and have this whole relaxing thing in the water, but I'm more interested in how you carry that into your life, like how it's integrated,
I love that.
So that's why, even in my practice, I don't just do water work. I offer what I call mindfulness mentoring, which extends the work that we do in the water into a land-based practice.
It's beyond the water.
It's beyond, just like beyond the fight. Right. Exactly. We go beyond the water, and that's to help, because people have these aha moments in the water, and then they're like, what do I do with this? How do I integrate this?
So typically how many, sessions do people have with you? Or do you recommend okay, if during the first ones things come up, you're like, okay, do you, I mean, it's hard to say with your crystal ball. Is it 3 visits?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I don't really put a container around it. I think people come as often as they can, or as often as they need to. For me, even if nothing is going on, I may come for a session just to remember and be reminded about my own fluid nature. Just to, because
it's awareness.
There's an awareness. There's, like I said, just navigating modern human life. There's a certain amount of constant tension that we hold, unless you are, the
Super
Buddha
Zen.
or something,
Right.
or super Zen,
Yeah.
and so it's just a way to kind of continue to rest, what I call resting back, and to remind you that you can rest back, even before we start. Well, it's like before we start our podcast, I'll just let everyone in on this insight that, I invited you both to just drop into a nice long exhale and just feel that letting go, feeling your feet touch the floor, feeling your back on the chair, because often we're forward, right? And it's like, oh, we can rest back. We have a back body, right? And so that's the literal resting back. But then there's the more figurative, which is we don't have to be in this frontal engagement all the time with everything, wrestling everything, that we can just rest back and let there be an ease and allow things to unfold. Your clients, I imagine some of your cases might take a long time to resolve. And it's like, how do we rest back and let that process play, and trust the process and be at ease and navigate the whole process with as much grace and ease as possible, so that we're not adding more anxiety just in the whole legal realm to this
Right.
trauma that or the injury that already happens.
Well, one of the biggest things that I see is, it's kind of this phases, and I've talked about it before. I've had a couple injuries where, they're so bad, everybody knows that it was bad. You're 3 weeks in the hospital, 15 surgeries, that's easy to accept that
Right.
you are not coming out the same person.
Right.
Because I shouldn't say it's easy to accept. It's easy to acknowledge that there's a change.
Right. Right.
You have some minor things that, although some may say minor, it impacts you. And maybe that impact is 3 months, maybe that impact is 6 months, but it impacts you. And during that time, it's significant. But there's others where are bad, but maybe people don't see that, how bad it is. It's that unseen aspect. And it's that little kind of that reptilian part of the brain that says, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. Because if I'm not okay, or for me to be okay, I'm going to go do whatever it is that I normally do. And if I can't do what I normally do, then I'm not okay. And if I'm not okay, then that's not good. And it's this sort of like hamster, running on a little wheel. And those, from my perspective, I see those are, it's I can help the most. Friends and family can help the most because they can kind of help recognize that this is going on. And it takes, but for that person to get over it, they have to kind of step off of that denial wheel, and they have to begin to acknowledge that what happened to me was bad, and what happened to me isn't necessarily going away unless I take some steps to change.
Totally. And I think that process, what you're describing is kind of this cognitive recognition of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I approach it from the other way. We call it a bottom-up approach, where we're coming at it from the body.
Okay.
And so, I might ask somebody, has your sleep patterns changed?
Yes.
Have your eating patterns changed?
Yes.
If you close your eyes right now and you bring your attention inward, do you notice that there's any tension that you feel present in your body? And they're like, well, yeah, I feel this ball, like you talked about, in the chest. And it's like, oh, so bingo, ding, ding, ding. There it is. I love that you call your podcast Unseen Impact, because there is so much that isn't seen.
Correct.
And so then how do we see that which is unseen, right?
Yeah.
And we shine a light on it. And so then how do we shine that light on it? Through awareness, through noticing, right? If we're so busy that we don't ever pause to notice, like you said, you think that you're fine. You don't understand that you had this fight with your partner because actually you're carrying all this tension from some other thing that happened. We don't make these connections because we're not bringing this attention internally, right?
I love starting from the inside, because when you start from the outside, it's so easy to put up your shield, to put up your defenses, to say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But it's because what I've noticed is that eventually what happens is people realize it seeps down, and they realize deep down, I'm not so fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying, and I love this, to start from the inside and say, what do you feel? What's going on? What's happening there?
Let me give you a really easy example for people to understand. Let's say that you are afraid of flying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I could give you all the statistics, right? Like
Right.
you are more likely to be struck by lightning than you would to have any problem on a plane.
Yeah.
Right? You're whatever the, stats are.
Yeah.
Planes are safe.
Yeah.
Period. How many planes are flying right now in this moment? How many?
Over us.
I don't know if the numbers, hundreds of thousands of people are in the air right now all over the world, and they're landing fine. But I could tell you that all day long. Does that make your phobia of flying go away? No.
Mm-hmm.
No.
What's going to help you with your fear of flying? As a somatic therapist, I'm going to say, and I've had clients that I've coached through this.
Yeah.
Instead of getting on the plane and downing 3 gin and tonics before you take off, you get on the plane, you feel your butt in the chair.
Yeah.
If it helps you to look out the window, look out the window. If it doesn't help you, close the window shade. Feel your feet on the floor of the plane. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Allow slow, gentle breaths, emphasizing the exhale. The exhale is where we are letting go. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part that allows us to be calm and relax. If you feel anxious, notice where you feel it. Oh, I'm feeling a tightness in my chest. Okay, I'm going to bring my breath right there into my chest. I'm exhaling into that. So this is how you engage with your fear of flying. It becomes an embodied practice. It's not this cognitive experience. So we can't say, hey, you've got to realize, man, you're injured here. No, it's like,
I'm looking at you.
Yeah. It's like, no, you say we feel it from the inside. And the important piece is that we feel it without agenda, right?
Okay. What do you mean by that, without agenda?
So if I say, God, like, Ben, why are you so afraid of flying? It's fine. Like, okay, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to do the breath exercises I was told. So you have this agenda that you're trying to then it's like you're trying to override.
It's a box you got to check.
And that you're trying to override what is authentically here, what is authentically alive and present. Yeah. So the whole idea is that we want to meet what is alive and present without any agenda, that we're not really trying to fix it, but we know in the back of my mind that we are fixing it.
Yeah.
Just by being with it.
And Ben, can you tell us what do people typically say after they've had their first session? Like, what are the common things hear when people are like, wow, that was...
I can tell you what. Well, just a quick... I can't remember if I told you this one. I was telling somebody else. After our first session, I was so twisted that, it was a beautiful day. It was beautiful out. I step out of the pool. You're right there. You hand me your card, and I look down, and I read it to myself. I almost said it aloud. I said, oh, Bob. Well, this guy doesn't look like a Bob, right? And then, so the next day we saw you, and I was like, hey, Kerrie, this is Bob. And you're like, I'm Ben.
That's funny.
Because you were just out of this world. Like, you had just gone through this experience.
I was glowing. It was like this energy flowing through me. It felt like I was in another place.
So, I'm always a little hesitant to name that which people feel, because I don't want to project onto anyone else. Like, I want each person to have their own authentic experience.
Sure.
However, I do describe it, on my website. I have a little description about it. Some of the words that people use will say something like, that is the most relaxed I've ever felt in my life. I've heard that all the time. People say, I felt so free. Oh. It felt spacious. Wow. I felt so safe. Wow. I felt like I was back in the womb. Is a very, like an embryonic experience. Yeah. Another really common, I felt like a dolphin, or I felt like a mermaid, especially if I do some underwater work with them. Yeah. Out of body experience, sometimes even, in an otherworldly, like they went to outer space or to the far reaches of the universe.
What this makes me think about is that for my clients, or for future clients, or friends and family members of these people who are injured, imagine that you or your friend or family who's hurt is saying that. Like, they're hurt. I wish I could feel like I'm back in the womb. I wish I could feel like I'm flying. I wish I could feel like I'm a dolphin. It's kind of interesting when we're talking about starting from the bottom, or starting from the body and going out. What I like the idea is, let's start to think about, for people, wouldn't you love to feel this way? If we're talking about beyond the fight, wouldn't you love to feel that lightness? Wouldn't you love to feel the space as a way to invite them into thinking about it?
Yeah. And at the same time, I go back to what I was saying, that we don't want to necessarily project the end goal. There isn't an end goal, right? The whole, at least in my practice, it's about trusting the process.
Okay.
So, when you come to me for a session, I'm not looking at you as there's something wrong I need to fix. I'm not thinking to myself, oh, I'm going to make him fly. I'm going to make him, because the moment I feel like I'm going to take you and I'm going to start doing this particular moves to make you feel like you're flying, sure enough, if that is my agenda, guaranteed, you're going to like pop up out of the water and be like, whoa, that was, something's going to shift for you. Like my goal is going to not work,
Yeah.
So the whole idea is to say, look, we just start with where we are. We start with cultivating awareness. We meet each other in presence. We come together in this safe container, and then we just start moving and we just see where it goes, because let's say at the end of the session, a person is crying. That happens. That's not uncommon. They might be laughing, but they also might be in tears. Why are they crying when they just had this beautiful experience? Well, it's because there's a release. Right. The body is releasing. So I can't say to this person, oh, how would you like to have this whole emotional catharsis? By the end of this session, we're going to have a huge emotional catharsis, Right. Like I can't have that agenda.
That's a good
You know what I mean? So for me, it's really about, there's so much worry that we just don't know about trauma. And, I'm holding this book,
Tell us about this book.
Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk. It's been around a long time. But when I read this, I was like, you have to be kidding me. Like this guy put into words that which I have been experiencing with clients for the 17 years, 18 years I've been working in the water. I had never read, someone else putting to words what I had seen over and over and over in the water, but the whole idea is that, we don't know where it's going to go. We just have to start, and we start right here with this,
And can you tell us what is your website?
Oh, thanks for asking.
Of course.
It's waterbreathandbody.com.
Waterbreathandbody.com.
Well,
I call my work Water, Breath, and Body Sessions. It's just the name that I've given to it because I've studied these different modalities in the water. And I should mention, because my work is so influenced by my main mentor. Her name is Shantam Lance, and she created an approach called fluid presence. And that approach is an approach, it's not just water-based, it's really anyone who's working with people. Like, oh my gosh, like light bulbs just went off. There could be a fluid presence workshop for personal injury attorneys around how it is that we meet our clients.
I love it.
How do we show up for our clients? Because it just dawned on me, because that's her work, is that it's fluid presence. She would if she ever sees this, she would laugh. It's not something we do, it's a way of being. Remembering our own fluid nature and this resting back into presence. And that has inspired so much of the work I do now in my water, breath, and body sessions.
It's so cool to learn about. Thank you.
What's been most surprising for me is we've known each other for a while. We've done work together, and I never made this sort of connection that what I do as an attorney is attempting to strive to what you're talking about, beyond the fight, beyond the water, trying to really make the person whole and help them with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's really cool. And I'm just. It's really exciting for me because my whole MO is that I just want the whole world to navigate this human experience with more grace and ease.
Right.
That's fantastic.
And that you as an attorney are seeing beyond the obvious, the unseen, it just really warms my heart. So I applaud you both for even having this podcast and talking about these things kind of beyond the obvious. It's really beautiful work.
Well, thank you. I love it. And so with some of this is that, I think what we've covered today is that, unseen injuries can really disrupt lives and families. And so we hope that this gives a little glimpse into what it looks like and what it looks like on that other side and what it could be. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you can, remember to rate, review, subscribe. You can watch this on YouTube and even now Spotify, and you can listen to it on any of the podcast platforms. So thank you again, Ben.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Ben.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Andrew.
Thanks for having me.